Chapter 2, a preface to the META Duality Theory. Universal META Duality Theory is based on a simple and yet complicated thought theory. Everything in our physical world is built with its own opposite pole except for one thing. Can you guess what that is? What exists in our world that has not only one opposite pole? We shall get into that later. The interaction of the opposite poles is the keystone of the world we are living in and the things we create, hence the world we are interacting with. Both inside us as well as outside of us, every cause has an effect that has its opposite pole. In the notes that accompany this book, you will find a diagram that explains this cycle between happiness, passion and growth, anger, resistance and rejection, unhappiness, failure and phasing out, and peace, success and balance. Throughout that diagram, you will notice that vulnerability serves as motivation for change. The law of consciousness consisting of a two-part law, combined consciousness ability and sustained consciousness ability. Everything that has a purpose is energy. Everything that has a purpose has an opposite pole. Any kind of energy has an opposite pole which has a purpose. Everything with a purpose has a cause and effect, describing the consciousness condition which is presented in a unit. A consciousness contains a purpose which presents an energy form, which also has an opposite pole, as everything is built and rises from the concept, cause and effect, the law of consciousness. A wholeness consists of two units as opposite poles, described as the creator of the next cause and effect in their integration. So, a man and a woman together become a couple system. Night and day, where one day has its own system. Dynamic intuition and organic instinct, which become our compass system. Winter and summer, which is a seasonal system. Plus and minus, which makes up our entire calculation system. Emotional and operational intelligence, which forms the basis of our entire intelligence system, and right and left side of the brain, which is the whole system of the brain. Any creator or consciousness is able to navigate with all hypotheses of the theory. Coincidences become coincidence ability. Integrations become integration ability. Creating wholenesses becomes a wholeness ability. Finding new, improved ways becomes an innovation ability. Handling the differences or opposite poles becomes a divergent ability. And the ability to comprehend the opposite pole becomes a capacity ability. When we speak of the innovation ability, all kinds of energies are end production and start cause of everything within us and around us, an energetical cause and effect. Every opposite pole, together with the other opposite poles, has a transformation phase as a compromise towards the 0 point in the middle. In other words, where the two opposite poles meet equally in the 0 point, loop of time, the change point, the only possibility for a reaction to take place and change the circumstances. The transformation phase is the activator for the changes needed for the opposite poles to be able to make the needed movements, change and thereby transform one condition to the other, one energy condition to the other energy condition, from minus to plus, from success to failure, or the other way around. An example, the compromise and transformation phase of winter is autumn and spring. Hold on to your hat and glasses, because now we have to keep our tongues in our mouths. Each duality has its own duality, exactly like mathematical axes in a unit circle. Therefore, we have the opportunity of moving ourselves or our thoughts, both circular and linear. We are not going to dive into that in this book, but in Book 2 about META DUALITY THEORY, a book about the theoretical part behind duality and dualities. However, we take the basic concepts further in this text. Let us just deal with the fact that winter has the linear duality called summer, but has two transformation phases, spring and autumn, being the link to the summer and vice versa. As dualities meet dualities, then a circular, ongoing cycle is created, which never stops, and which is non-stop changing, like in a circle. It creates new circumstances, as they are both the cause and effect of each other. This principle applies for all opposite poles, even for femininity and masculinity in every woman or man, opposite poles in a unit. In the notes that accompany this audiobook, you will notice a diagram that deals exactly with this cycle and interaction between the pattern breaker and the receiver, cause and effect. Civilization. The emotional and operational intelligence based on dynamic intuition and organic instincts. Our opposite pole is the opposite, the foreigner. But our opposite pole is also our provocateur, and thus our activator for movement, for changes, development, transformation. It's our energy input, which we transform and use to move ourselves through life, both emotionally and operationally, dynamically, intuitively, and organically, instinctively. Not only in the organic systems like the human kingdom, the animal kingdom, etc., but also in the non-organic systems, such as digital intelligence, or a system being not organic, and which we create ourselves, for instance, companies, political systems, etc. The systematic, result-oriented transformer stations, which may consist of a lot of organic units, the employees. So let us hold on to the fact that we spring from a basic thought form, being we have a contradiction and therefore we exist. In the interaction with our contradictions, we can receive and transform energy in the transformation phase towards the middle. There we must meet in agreement. This makes us alive and keeps us moving linearly. In addition to this, our duality has another duality, and they meet each other and create circular movement patterns. We live in a changing world where everything is in motion and constant change. Every system also has a recognizable pattern, which we use to create our realities that we can relate to. When you look at the world in the form of dualities, then everything becomes more concrete and shows a concrete pattern which is easy to understand and therefore helps us comprehend what we feel in our emotions. This is the framework of our comprehension ability, the one time creates and which sets the framework about this concept, making everything understandable for us. The brain twister becomes, truth has a duality. The credibility of the truth is created when there is balance in the duality of a truth. And then it all becomes less ambiguous. The intangible is transformed into something tangible, where we can understand and comprehend our circumstances, opposite poles, and thereby the outside world. By this, our instincts are used consciously as an organic navigation compass. The compass which we, over time, have bound to time. This means that we have developed ourselves into using our instincts more consciously. Is that not what we call civilization? But do our instincts not have an opposite pole? Yes, namely our intuition, which must also be integrated equally into our compass, like plus and minus in our mathematical world. Civilization is an intelligence condition of a consciousness, where empathy and understanding create some elementary basic rules for a certain behavior pattern. In this context, we talk about a combined consciousness ability, the quality of a renewable energy condition depends on its state of consciousness, its state of intelligence. Civilized dynamic intuition and organic instinct. In the civilization, we start using our dynamic intuition more consciously, as it is, for instance, able to distinguish between a real, tangible anxiety, which our organic instincts tell us about, and the anxiety which is not tangible consciously. This means that our dynamic intuition is our compass used to distinguish between what I call dirt and cinnamon by using our emotional intelligence. For instance, the fear of the fire burning your hand, this you know physically, versus the anxiety of getting hurt or having a bankruptcy, what you do not know, not physically. One is an instinctive feeling, and the other one an intuitive feeling, to get burnt physically or to feel failure. Imagine if we would solely respond to our instincts, then we would probably have to go back to the primeval time and the primitive lifestyle we had then. We've developed and continuously develop ourselves towards the best version of us, like an organism we call humans. We learn from each other, meaning that we create learning for others by learning ourselves, or vice versa. Therefore, it's vital for us to develop with a combined intelligence, now that our emotional intelligence as a dynamic intuition combines with our organic instinct as an operational intelligence, strengthening each other. And in cooperation, they become our new, updated compass consciously. They cooperate without us knowing this. This goes for our systems as well as for us humans. Very interesting. Think how wonderfully we are made. One thing is that, like our instincts that run autonomously on autopilot, which we are gradually also more conscious about, we also have our own intuition that runs autonomously, which we are gradually getting more and more conscious about. We are in a development phase in which we are defining and setting the framework for our dynamic intuition to be able to understand it better and better. We find the tools to use it in the systems we are building and existing in. The communication and the language that are constantly going on in our unconsciousness. One thing is that our dynamic intuition and organic instincts are inborn and react autonomously. Another thing is that we are in the process of creating a new reality for ourselves, where we can more consciously make use of the large genetic resource we have with us, both energetically and physically. Can you still remember the dynamics of the seasons? When spring intuitively transforms into summer, the transformation phase was the intuitive keystone of nature. It knows intuitively that it is time for a change. In cooperation with nature, an instinctive process is taking place, setting off the duality, a linear and circular energetic process, 4 seasons tied to each other in a circle, by which is started an action in nature in the form of a transformation from spring to summer. The dynamic intuition of nature informatively sets a transformation process in motion, which nature's organic instincts implement in the change process from spring to summer, quite concretely, by, for example, trees getting buds, and everything slowly comes back to life from the dormancy, so that it, again, can be beautiful and green and alive. This process is the keystone for sustainability. After all, we are a product of nature, and our survival depends on nature. Nature is based on the dualities, and so are we. Our intelligence needs to make everything tangible to be able to navigate and convert information into actions. Time creates the frame which makes the world more structured to us all. Even time is always changing, just like nature and us, and in one direction only. Like life and death, cause and effect, we are only getting older, and an effect requires a cause, rather simple. In these dynamics, there is a receiver and a pattern breaker, constantly working with and in the formula, where a cause has an effect has a consequence. The consequence changes the circumstances influence our experiences, which lead to changes and renewed energy, and this brings with it wisdom, which becomes a renewed cause. In the notes accompanying this audiobook, you will notice a diagram that deals with this relationship between summer and fire lying on the west, autumn and air lying in the north, winter and water lying in the east, and spring and earth lying in the south of a grid, where summer is changed into autumn in the present, and a new transformation is created, where a linear duality meets another linear duality, and a circular duality is created. Your emotional intelligence, dynamic intuition, and your operational intelligence, organic instincts, constantly speak to you in the form of our emotions and through the reactions from our physical body, the strategic way we think, feel, and act, exactly like nature. For example, when we get older by our age in step with time, which only goes one way, the body has its operational functions, being controlled by our organic instinctive functions. In other words, to get older. First, it develops from infancy to a fully grown individual. Then it goes into liquidation, then into dormancy, death as we call it. Our dynamic intuition is our maturation process, and it shows us our independence level, our abilities to develop with ease. It shows us the timing of the needed changes, which our body and our energy need. It is our compass for change processes and makes us ready for the transformation phase, which we cannot avoid, as our organic instincts have control over it in the form of our physical DNA, being inborn, exactly like getting grey hair when we get older. Our dynamic intuition is based on our emotional intelligence as an energetic DNA, which is also inborn. Therefore, the balance of our emotional intelligence, EQ, is needed in all kinds of change processes, as it takes place both unconsciously and consciously. It shows us how we may break the patterns we live in, and how we must be receptive to change processes, which our organic instincts bring along all the time, in step with the META DUALITY theory, which in this case will be life and death, processes like the phase out and the transformation phase, from spring to summer, from 30 years to 31 years. When we talk about combined consciousness ability, sustainability is the quality and balance of life. We have created time. We have created time because we need it, or because we need to create a kind of limitation to be able to understand a very complicated system outside ourselves, such as nature and what it contributes to. Time is, for us humans, the biggest enemy, as we calculate everything in time, and yet it's the most valuable thing. The key to success is to be able to handle the understanding of this and the usage of time most appropriately. This is where we can use our organic instincts more consciously as the strategic movement pattern. It is also where we can make more conscious use of our dynamic intuition to be able to break patterns easier and easily be receptive to nature's repetitive patterns that only go one way, like also time does. We shall never become a child again. An old big tree does not become a small tree again, and time only goes one way. We can go into dormancy and get reborn, just like the tree that dies, and its seeds become a new tree. However, the process from winter to spring is a dynamic, intuitive transformation phase over which we have no control. It has its time, and the process takes the time needed for completion. Nature, our body, and thus our brain and heart, are like our nervous system. They also have the dynamic, intuitive process, which we are not in control of or quite conscious about yet. This is the physical and energetic genetic process inside us and nature. The combined intelligence, combined consciousness, are the ancient words of wisdom echoing from the past in silence. Wholeness and wholeness ability. If our hypothesis holds true, and everything has its opposite pole, except for one thing, then this is the place where everything with one opposite pole ceases and is a turning point, a reset point, where a condition is transformed to another one in a transformation phase. How can we make use of the wholeness and this interaction between two opposite poles which create the wholeness? Should we simply look at the course of nature and learn? But nature probably doesn't have the emotional intelligence that we have. Or does nature also have an emotional intelligence, which it already uses, and therefore is so powerful that it always overwhelms us humans, where in the most magnificent way it keeps the balance, and balances with us? There are so many things we do not yet know, or which we are not yet evolved to know. But nature teaches us and shows us everything we need to be able to evolve. Anyway, the power of nature can at any time overcome us with its surprising knowledge, consciousness, and movement patterns. So I wonder if we should take a few steps back, or maybe just forwards, so that being humans, we can use all the knowledge we have achieved so far and combine it and use it in the future. Ancient people had a knowledge which we can take up today, integrated in the new intelligence forms of knowledge we have discovered, and maybe learn to balance more and more with all forms of our genetic intelligences in a more conscious interaction with the dualities we were born in and with. Maybe start using our energetic genetic intelligence, which we were also born with. Here, we are talking about our wholeness and wholeness ability. Wholeness ability is when we use all of our abilities in an interaction with each other, so that they strengthen each other, and thereby create bigger capacity inside us, where we can consciously develop and phase out the needed abilities in balance. On wholeness ability, if you do not have a possible solution, then you do not have enough knowledge to criticize. We judge the things that we do not understand, and we see them as a threat.